Hi, welcome back to the Wednesday night Bible study. We're on our 17th installment of 1 Thessalonians, where we're studying 1 Thessalonians, Paul's letter, one of two letters to the Thessalonians. What have we been studying in 1 Thessalonians lately? Well, the last couple of weeks, Paul has concentrated on the Lord's return, Jesus coming back. We look specifically at things called the rapture and the day of the Lord. So his letter is now done with that topic. These remaining few weeks and the rest of his letter will look at a list of do's and don'ts. Paul is winding down his letter and has some advice he wants to give. And Paul begins his do's and don'ts with a list of things important to do. Why are they important? They're important, even essential, for healthy relationships among believers. It was important enough for Paul to write the Thessalonians about them back then, and I think it's useful for today. For today, they're just what many churches need. So now let's look at chapter 5 of 1 Thessalonians, starting with verse 12. Now we ask you, brothers, to respect those who work hard among you, who are over you in the Lord, and who admonish you. Hold them in the highest regard and love because of their work. Live in peace with each other. It continues, and we urge you, brothers, warn those who are idle, encourage the timid, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Make sure that nobody pays back wrong for wrong, but always try to be kind to each other and to everyone else. So first thing to notice here, Paul uses brothers, which we can look at as brothers and sisters. He uses it twice in these couple of verses, a few verses. He's addressing fellow believers. That's the brothers, fellow believers. It's often translated brethren, and that's Paul's favorite name for believers, using brothers and brethren. He used brothers 27 times in the two letters to Thessalonians, in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, and they're always addressing the local church. To me, this underscores Paul's seeing the local church as a family. A family. We're all children of God with the same Father. For the most part, these do's are how believers should deal with believers. How believers deal with believers. As a family, we're to work together, stick together, help each other, even correct each other. So Paul's advice, or his commands really, are intended to keep the family functional. Also notice there's a division in these few verses. Let's go back to verse 12. I won't read the whole thing again, but now it says, first it begins with, we ask you. We ask you. That's the New International Version translation we have up here. Now we ask you, brothers, to respect those, etc., etc. Other translations are, we request of you. That's the New American Standard. We appeal to you, the New Revised Standard. Or we beseech you, the King James Version. So we ask, request, beseech, appeal to you, followed by a couple of items. Now, and then in verse 14, Paul writes, we urge you. So here he's asking, and then it goes to, we urge you. I don't know if I have that up here. Yes, we urge you. Again, brothers. And then lists other items. So there is a division of things kindly requested, are those first few verses, a couple verses, and then things urgently needed. Well, one more thing. For these verses, I found that different versions use quite different English words in the translation. This isn't all that unusual, but usually the English is fairly synonymous. Here, there's not so much contradictory things going on, but there's a couple times where a different slant occurs in a couple places. I'll point these out as we look more closely at the verses. Okay, let's look at the things kindly requested. First, we see from the first 1.5 verses. I'm going to go back to it. Now we ask you, brothers, to respect those who work hard among you, who are over you in the Lord, and who admonish you. Hold them in the highest regard in love because of their work. That's what I've underlined here. From this, we find this request from Paul. Respect your spiritual leaders. I think it all kind of sums up to that. Respect your spiritual leaders. And how does Paul describe spiritual leaders? We'll look at the last half of verse 12. Respect those who work hard among you, who are over you in the Lord, and who admonish you. So he has three groups, although they're not mutually exclusive. It could be the same people for all three, or a couple of them. There's those who work hard among you, or, as New American Standard translate, diligently labor among you. And then there's those who are over you in the Lord and those who admonish you. That first group, those who work hard among you, to me that covers many, many people in the church. In the church setting, that could include like those who work in the nursery or children's church. It could be Bible study teachers. It could be the greeters at the door, those who provide music for the singing. And then there's anyone who guides us in our spiritual walk. That could be even outside the church. Maybe outside the four walls of the church building, but they're members of the church. Fellow believers. They might not even be of the same group, but they are fellow believers. So those who work hard among you, we're to respect them. Respect our spiritual leaders. You may have noticed the first group doesn't include a set of people, which most churches have, and that is a board and or the elders of a church. So taking Paul's description in its entirety, this is who Paul had in mind when he mentions the second group, those who are over you in the Lord. That could be the elders of the church. That could be the board. They're over you in the Lord. It's often the pastor or the preacher too. He even used the term overseers. I want to emphasize the in the Lord part. Overseeing you in the Lord. The implication is that the leaders or the overseers or the elders are in God's will. If that part is not happening, the whole thing becomes very dysfunctional. As we see throughout the letters, his letters, Paul established local churches. He quickly established a group of elders to oversee them. And then there's the last part of the description, those who admonish you. Now that's a third group of people, but it really can include some of the others. It could be the elders. In fact, it's often one of the roles of the elders. You could also look at this as maybe the translation being those who instruct you. That might be a bit better. So that could be the preacher, that could be the teacher, that could be the elders who admonish you or teach you. Think of it as more being guides to walking the Christian walk. But there sometimes is a need for admonishment. It's leading to correction. That's one of the responsibilities of the elder, more than the preacher. So, the admonishment could be for the person's own good, some correction. So, taken together, we're to respect our leaders. And what's part of respecting them? Verse 13 kind of tells us that. Hold them in the highest regard. But notice what for. Why are we holding them in the highest regard? Because of their work. Not their titles, their degrees, not because they have a wonderful personality or they're charismatic, but because of their ministry, because of what they're doing in the kingdom. It doesn't mean we should put them on a pedestal. We shouldn't blind ourselves to their faults. There are bad apples who are overseers. They're not perfect. They can make good intentioned mistakes, but we should acknowledge their calling and their hard work on our behalf. So a second request from the second half of verse 13 is live in peace with each other. From that we get promote peace. That's what I'm saying here in the second one. Promote peace. This seems like an obvious desire. Who wouldn't want peace in the family? So we each have a powerful tool which can either promote peace or destroy peace. It's something that comes up often in the New Testament letters. You know what I'm talking about? It comes up often in the New Testament. What I'm getting at is the tongue. The tongue. What comes out of our mouths. What kind of things don't promote peace? Things like criticism and gossip. And then on the other hand, a controlled tongue can go a long way toward peace, controlling what we say. Paul had some instruction on peacekeeping in Romans 12, but with one distinction. I'm going to bring up Romans 12. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves. That's from verse 10. of Romans 12. Verse 16, live in harmony with one another. Or another translation, be of the same mind toward one another. And then verse 18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So he's talking about peace there when he's talking to the Romans, writing the Romans. If possible, I think is important. Where did I see that? If it is possible, that's verse 18. If it is possible, implies that there may be times when we can love and honor another person until we're blue in the face and still not find peace. Our responsibility is to do all we can. But if the other person turns away, that's beyond our responsibility. Bottom line is, to live in peace is a very important thing for a family and a church. We probably all have heard stories of churches having non-peaceful times, and it can even cause a split in the church. It can destroy a church. All right, so what we just read in 1 Thessalonians covers two of the don'ts so far. So I'll put them back up again. And where did we go? Things kindly requested in these verses from Paul are to 1, respect your spiritual leaders, and 2, promote peace. So I think this is a good place to stop. We'll continue next week with the next couple of verses. And Paul is going to wrap up in intensity here. And he's going to get into urgently needed. In fact, we're going to look at, I'm thinking we'll get through 7 of them, or 5 of them, from 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the do's and don'ts are urgently needed. As it said, we saw in the scripture, we urge you to do these following things. Okay? So, in the meantime, take care, and may the Lord be with you.